Angel and the Witch Hunter by John Victor Ramses. Copyright 2024. Angel and the Witch Hunter is a work of fiction. Names of characters are the result of fiction or coincidence. Chapter 19. The barn doors creaked as John pulled them open, the sound echoing in the stillness of the farm. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and hay, mingled with a faint hint of engine oil. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight spilling through the cracks between the timbers, faintly illuminating a structure that seemed untouched by time. Stepping inside, John cast an orb into the air, lighting the interior as if it were a midday sun. In the center of the barn sat a hulking shape draped in a faded canvas tarp. He stopped beside it and rested his hand on the rough fabric as if touching a sacred relic of his past. A rare, almost wistful smile crossed his face. "Hello, old girl," he murmured. Then, with a single motion, he snapped the tarp away. Before him stood a black Jeep Cherokee, a square-body style from a long-forgotten era in vehicle history. But this was no ordinary rig, it was a machine seemingly built for survival, as though engineered for an end-of-the-world event. Its oversized tires and lift kit gave it an imposing stance, while the roof rack, fitted with a collapsible tent and reinforced storage, hinted at adventures both planned and unplanned. The matte finish on the body seemed to absorb the light, giving the Jeep an aura of quiet, deadly purpose. To John it was a masterpiece, a machine that spoke to him of rugged determination and memories of simpler times. John could almost hear his father's voice as he circled the Jeep, inspecting every detail. They had built it together, long before his calling as a witch hunter, long before the burden of destiny had consumed him. Opening the driver's side door, the scent of aged leather and faint traces of his father's pipe smoke enveloped him, transporting his mind back to nights spent under the stars, fishing poles in hand, and the crackle of a campfire. For a moment, the weight of his situation lifted, and he allowed himself the luxury of the memory. John slid into the seat, running his hands over the worn steering wheel. His father's fingerprints were probably still etched into the grain of the leather, mingled now with his own. The Jeep had been parked since his father's passing over a decade ago, its engine silent and its purpose dormant. Waiting. Releasing the hood latch, John checked the oil and water. Everything looked as it should, preserved by the dry air of the barn and of course a dose of magic. Placing his hand on the battery, he summoned a faint pulse of energy. Electricity crackled at his fingertips as he coaxed life back into the old cell. Then, climbing back into the cab, he took a deep breath and turned the key in the ignition. To his relief, the modified V8 engine roared to life on the first try. Its deep rumble, the sound of early American muscle, caused the barn to vibrate, shaking loose a fine layer of dust from the rafters. John smiled again, a rare and genuine expression of pride and satisfaction. "I've sure missed you," he said quietly, patting the dashboard as though it were an old friend. The Jeep was more than transportation. It was a connection to his father, to the human experiences he had grown to understand and to cherish, and to the much younger man he used to be. Today it would carry him to their secret camp near Swayze Peak, where he would prepare mentally for the next stage of his journey. He eased the Jeep out of the barn, the tires growling over gravel as the morning sun bathed the farm in golden light. The gas gauge read full, its fuel also magically preserved by his father who had last driven the old machine before his passing. As John drove, the hum of the engine seemed to echo the resolve in his heart. It was a reminder of who he is and where he came from, invoking the strength he would need for the battles yet ahead. Reaching Swayze Peak was no Sunday drive. From the farm to the foot of the house range, the spiderweb of dirt roads remained fairly smooth, hard-packed from the many travelers exploring the west desert of Millard County. Skirting north, the road eventually became little more than a trail as it followed the course of a steep, dry creek bed. While better negotiated with an ATV or better yet horseback, the tire tread of the old Jeep bit sure-footed into dirt and scree, climbing with ease as it had always done. The sun had traveled well into its afternoon position as John approached his destination, the ravines now enveloped in dark shadows. Rising over 9,600 feet above sea level, Swayze Peak loomed just ahead. The 50-mile drive from the family farmhouse near Abraham had cost him nearly 4 hours of daylight, but it had been a pleasant, mind-clearing drive. Coming to an oddly shaped rock outcrop, John slowed to a stop and studied the terrain. It had been a long time since he was last here with his father, but he still recognized the landmark showing the path to the secret camp that today only 2 Mercers knew of. A faint path, not much more than a game trail, wound its way around the south side of the landmark where it seemingly vanished into a sheer wall of limestone. Locking the brakes but leaving the jeep running, John stepped out and walked toward the limestone wall. Moving aside the brush, he soon found what he was looking for. A carving at the base of the stone in the shape of a hummingbird within a circle. Where its eye should have been was a slight depression bearing a faint symbol, a symbol matching the one on John's enchanted ring. John stood up, then carefully surveyed his surroundings for other adventurers who might be nearby. Satisfied he was alone, he knelt down and pressed his ring into the depression. Without hesitation, the natural-looking wall became translucent, revealing a narrow path through the formation. Returning to the jeep, he drove around the outcrop, aligning the wheels with the narrow passage before slowly driving through. To either side, the limestone rock rose almost vertical, the large tires occasionally brushing against it. After 100 or so feet, the narrow path opened up into a broad, flat, grassy meadow completely enclosed by sheer cliffs that rose to dizzying height. A waterfall poured from a hole in a cliff face, spilling down to form a small stream that settled into a wide pond in the center of the meadow. Pinyon pines and aspens grew abnormally tall, reaching for the sun, while an abundance of wildflowers, seemingly unaffected by the lateness of the year, filled the air with their aroma. John drove his jeep further in until reaching a spot near the pond, then shutting off the engine, he stepped out and deeply inhaled the air. Hummingbirds, glowing and leaving trails of magical dust, began to dart and hover around him, as if welcoming an old friend who had at last returned. Extending his hands, they lit on his fingers and arms, their magical energy causing his talisman to resonate against his chest. His soul was already healing with tranquility of the place as he breathed deeply once more before reacquainting himself with the old camp of his youth. The magical meadow had first been explored by his great-great-grandfather, Sebastian, who had been shown the location by his Paiute friend, Pawiki. Once sacred to the natives, few if any now survive who know the location of the sacred place, much less how to enter it. After Pawiki had been hung on false charges of horse theft by a U.S. cavalry patrol in 1882, Sebastian recovered his body, then returned to the meadow where he interred his old friend at the base of the cliff near the waterfall. He then created a seal and enchanted rock wall that has since guarded the only entrance. Gathering firewood, John cast a flame into the kindling. He didn't need to build a traditional fire, his magic could supply everything he required, but there was a nostalgia about roughing it as the humans referred to it. The smell of the smoke invoked memories of his youth, memories of being with his father. And in a way there was magic even in that. John Mercer sat by the crackling campfire, his gaze lost in the flickering flames. The pines and birch surrounding the secret campsite swayed gently, their movement almost imperceptible in the stillness of the forest. His enchanted Jeep Cherokee stood parked behind him, roof tent erected, the awning open. This was a sacred ground, steeped in magical resonance, where Veylin had imparted his wisdom through nature and the whispers of the earth. Here, magical hummingbirds thrived, tiny jeweled warriors darting through the air, their presence almost ethereal. Drawn to John, they hovered around him, causing a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. He closed his eyes, and in the rhythmic hum of their wings, he could almost hear his father's voice. Speed, agility, beauty, and grace, Veylin had said once, his weathered hands holding the hummingbird talisman aloft. But most of all, the warrior's spirit. This talisman is more than just magical protection, son. It's a reminder of who you are and what you must protect, the small, vulnerable, innocent. John's fingers unconsciously caressed his shirt where the talisman rested against his chest. He flashed back to that night by the fire years ago, the two of them sitting in companionable silence, the stars above vast and endless. "I wish you were here now, Dad," John murmured, his voice breaking the silence of the present. His life was in shambles. His daughter was gone. His mother had betrayed him. The High Council hunted him like a criminal and wanted Amanraya destroyed. The weight of it all crushed him, and for the first time he allowed himself to bathe in the ache of it. Sensing John's pain, the hummingbirds circled him, their tiny bodies glowing faintly with the magic of this place. He felt his father's presence in their flight, as though Veylin himself were there, watching, guiding. For a moment, the pain eased, replaced by a sense of calm purpose. John picked up a smooth pebble, then tossed it into the middle of the pond, causing rings to radiate outward, then reflect back and out again. A soft humming sound resonated from the water, which held in its memory every moment it has ever witnessed. A scene from 25 years ago began to appear, drawing John into it as if he were there. This was created by Sebastian's friend, Pawiki, Veylin had said, holding the hummingbird talisman in his hand. It is made from the natural materials found only in this sacred place and imbued with the essence of the magical hummingbird. It is for protection first, illuminating whenever ill intent is present. It has been handed down father to son since, and today I am passing it on to you, son. The scene faded as the ripples on the water calmed. The talisman was John's most sacred possession, but even though it had protected him too many times to count, wearing it was not without certain heartache. If his father had worn it when he had traveled to Germany, he might still be alive today. But he had given it to John long before, believing his Battle Mage days were behind him. And then there was his daughter. It was meant to protect her too, but had somehow been removed from around her neck, leaving her vulnerable to abduction by her possessed mother. And yet, in this magical place where it had once been handcrafted by a Paiute shaman, John felt the talisman recharging, renewing, perhaps even becoming enhanced for a battle yet still ahead. The night had set in. Placing another log on the campfire, John reclined back, feeling at peace. But peace was fleeting. A rustling sound broke the stillness, followed by a light whoosh and a subtle displacement of air above him. John's eyes snapped open, his hands lit up with dangerous magic glowing in the dim light. From the star-strewn sky, two dark figures dropped silently into his camp. John jumped to his feet, his protective ward igniting around him, his flaming hands poised for battle. "Who are you?" he shouted. As the shadowy forms approached, their features became clear in the glow of the campfire. John's body tensed. Frost Coven Witches, Serena and Anastasia, the elder sisters of John's estranged wife, Lyra. "Stay your magic, Salvori," Serena said, her voice calm yet commanding. "We would only speak with you." Stunned by their unexpected appearance, John glared at the sight of them. "And why should I trust you?" "Your talisman isn't glowing, moron," Anastasia pointed out, never missing an opportunity to belittle him. "There is no evil intent on our part, yet." "Where is my daughter?" John growled. The two Frost Coven Witches ignored his question as they stopped before the campfire. Serena raised her hand. A whisper of magic invoked a nearby log to slide silently toward her, where she then sat gracefully upon it. Anastasia, less subtle, commanded a young pine to bow over, creating a seat for herself, parting her gown to reveal her open bare legs to mid-thigh. John's cautious gaze flicked between them, his own magic still a torrent humming in his hands. "Is no place secret, Serena? What do you want?" "We only want what you want, John," Serena replied, her gaze steady. "Our family back." John's stance softened slightly. Serena continued. "We followed you for 3 years now, hoping you would find our sister, and of course your child." Anastasia leaned toward John. You're supposed to be a witch hunter after all. But alas, not a very good one. And I'm supposed to pretend you don't know her location? He asked sarcastically. Believe what you will, John. John allowed Serena a brief benefit of doubt. Lyra's illusion magic is strong, he offered as an excuse. Serena nodded. Understandable, I suppose. She's the best, and her magic is no doubt enhanced by the demon. John remained stoic. I don't give a damn about your sister, Serena. I only want my daughter back. I'm sure you do. Serena's voice was smooth, almost hypnotizing. And what will you do when you at last find them, John? John's eyes narrowed. Lyra's in league with the Alzorion. The only way this can end is when she's dead and of no more use to the demon. He can't control my daughter without Lyra. I see, Serena smiled patronizingly. Well, that presents a problem. You speak tough, but you don't really have the heart to kill Lyra, do you? You still love her, or you wouldn't be carrying her wedding ring while still wearing yours after 3 years. John flinched, his eyes unconsciously glancing at the pouch on his belt where he kept Lyra's ring. Anastasia smirked. How do you think we track you, John? I made those rings, remember? Lyra's ring calls out to me. It's more accurate than an air tag. If the demon hadn't taken her ring off Lyra's finger, we would have found our sister and dealt with that bastard long ago. John's breath caught as his mind struggled to interpret Serena's words. You're saying you didn't conspire with Lyra and the demon to take my daughter? Not even Lyra conspired with the demon as you believe, Serena said. Her voice was laced with something John couldn't quite place, sorrow, perhaps, or regret. The demon took our sister like he took your daughter. John shook his head, his expression twisted in confusion as his magic dissipated. Lyra didn't betray me after all? Anastasia grimaced. Lyra loved you, John. Truly. It makes me want to vomit, but it is what it is. Serena shifted, leaning slightly toward John. Knowing that truth now will only make it far more difficult for you to fight the demon inside your wife's body. Your love won't allow you to hurt Lyra any more than you could hurt Amanraya. That makes you exceedingly vulnerable. And that's why love sucks, Anastasia spat. I ate the last man who said he loved me. Serena gave her sister a disapproving glance. Anastasia continued. Frankly, without your battle mage, you don't stand a chance in hell of beating an Alzorion demon, and hell is what you're facing. But you will also understand that Lyra is our sister, our family, and we will not allow your Sylvari to kill her either. So, it's going to get ugly, John. Angel won't kill her if she knows the truth, John asserted. You're blind, Salvori, Serena said. The demon will surely use Lyra's body to fight you. What will you do then? Call for marriage counseling? Shit, John, Anastasia groaned, shaking her head. You're already a dead man before the battle even begins. Pussy. John glared. He never liked Anastasia but had only tolerated her for his wife's sake. Anastasia was the epitome mean and nasty, a cold-blooded killer and man-hater, the kind of Frost Coven which he had commonly terminated during his calling. If Angel is truly a battle mage after her mother, she is programmed by instinct and training to protect her Eldryn kind. You know that. To Angel, Amanraya is a hybrid and Lyra is Ambrosian blood. Angel will kill your wife and child to save you, Eldryn. Then what? You kill Angel? Eldryn turn against Eldryn? Your family further destroyed while Lucifer laughs. John stared off into the dark. My God, all this because you loved a woman, Serena interrupted. Isn't that what you spoke to Taika? How did you know that? Like I said, we've been following you for 3 years. Your ex-girlfriend is pretty, John, Anastasia said coyly. Is she the one who ordered the execution of my sister back then? John ignored her. But to answer your question, Serena continued. No, not because you loved a woman, but because you loved a Frost Coven woman and produced a hybrid child never thought possible before. That's some set of balls for an old man, John, Anastasia said. I'm impressed. What's your secret? Vitamins? Jogging? Serena shifted. Your daughter is indeed one of a kind. Everyone fears Amanraya's potential power, even the Ambrosians. And everyone's afraid of something that's never been proven. Serena glanced at her sister, then sighed reluctantly before speaking. Not proven to you, John? What do you mean not to me? Serena stared into the flames of the campfire as though recalling a memory. Lyra brought Amanraya to our island home to visit some years ago. Yeah, and you weren't invited, Anastasia spat. Serena rolled her eyes. Give it a break, Anna? I remember, John said. It was a girls-only gathering. So what of it? Well, we were all playing a game in the courtyard called Hit the Monster, kind of like the humans' game of dodgeball, only with magic. We were having fun. Amanraya was truly enjoying herself, watching her mother and aunties play. But a monster, a harmless creation of our own illusion magic, had snuck up behind Amanraya and caught her off guard, startling her. She screamed and threw her hands up toward it. A blast of energy shot from her little hands, not only annihilating the monster but it created a blast zone through the trees all the way to the beach and into the sea. Hades knows how far after that it went. The fucking sand vitrified, Anastasia scowled. It's a nice path now though. John struggled to imagine the scene. Amanraya was only 8 years old. Serena nodded. Yes, to be honest, her power frightened all of us, including Lyra. Amanraya's blast would have killed us and everything in its path. Lyra had rushed to her daughter and held her close until she calmed, afraid she might strike again. John was reminded of the night at the mini-mart. Angel exhibited a similar power when she was startled, almost killing me. Yeah, we saw, Anastasia said. Nice job with that possessed dude, by the way. Eldryn magic is controlled by emotion. It was the Eldryn in Amanraya that triggered the blast when she became startled, like Angel. Why wasn't I told of Amanraya's magic? Because you're just a man and... Anna, Serena warned, snapping her hand up. Because Lyra didn't know how you'd take it, John. That was no average magic a parent might be proud of. The truth is, Anastasia said, Lyra worried that you would now look at Amanraya as some kind of freak and begin resenting her or ever marrying. John shook his head. Impossible. Whatever my daughter was or is, I love her. Lyra didn't create our child alone. Amanraya is one half her father. Yeah, the misfit part, Anastasia laughed. Serena continued. Your daughter is a wonderful, beautiful child, John, but you can understand Lyra's concern. She didn't want to lose you. It just proves again how much she loved you. John shook his head. If she'd only talked to me, her fears were baseless. She couldn't, Serena said. Amanraya didn't seem to know what happened, that the powerful blast had actually come from her, so we let it go. We swore an oath of secrecy not to reveal Amanraya's magic for obvious reasons. Not even to you, John. Anastasia rolled her eyes. So much for oaths. John pondered the revelations. But if no one knew, then how? How did the Alzorion find out? Serena finished his sentence. Every witch has her demons, John, as you well know. We believe one of them told Lucifer, who then sought to control that power for himself. So, he sent Azrakul to possess Lyra and use her magic to control Amanraya. Azrakul? Is that the Alzorion's name? A top-ranked general in Lucifer's dark army. Fuck, Anastasia sighed. He won't back down then. Before he killed my sister, she had vision of a terrible battle in which she fought against both Lyra and my daughter to save me. Anastasia giggled. You have to have a girl fight for you, sissy? Because your love left you an easy kill, I would imagine, Serena said. This just keeps proving my point about love, Anastasia sighed. This is bigger than just a father fighting for his child, Serena. Care to elaborate? Jessica believed she was born for that battle alone. If so, her calling was arranged by the monad itself, long before being born to this realm. That would mean that whatever is coming has the potential to alter the balance in the divine plan. The monad never planned for a being like Amanraya to exist. See, Anastasia snorted, you weren't supposed to bang my sister. It's freaky. Serena continued. But the monad created free will, which in turn caused a black swan event in the form of a child leading to the end of everything. Something like that, John mumbled. I'm sorry for the loss of your sister, John, Serena said. We had no animosity toward her. Except that she was going to kill our sister, Anastasia reminded. Well, there is that. From what little we have been able to glean, Serena said, your sister apparently transferred her Battle Mage power into her daughter, the healer. That's never been known to have occurred with any species before. But if true, it supports your belief that something really bad is about to happen. Lucifer knew your sister could prevent it, so he had her killed. The monad simply sent your niece back with her mother's power to take her place. This isn't just a battle, John. It's a damn war. Anastasia jumped in. And now Lucifer has an unbeatable weapon at his disposal. Amanraya. Way to go, John, Anastasia snapped. You couldn't just kill my sister and go home. You had to marry her and create a doomsday device that now threatens us all. Shit. I've got to say it one more time. This is why love sucks. I'm starting to see Anna's point, John, Serena frowned. At any rate, Lucifer wants you dead. Your High Council wants you, your wife and child dead, as we overheard. There's few you can trust. And that's why we decided to reveal ourselves to you now. What do you mean? It's ironic, isn't it, John? The very people you trusted most to help you save your family will kill you all without a bit of remorse. That must make yours a very lonely quest. Not so tough now, are you, witch hunter? Anastasia spat. Serena continued. But more ironic is the fact that the very witches you were trained to hunt and kill are now your only allies. That's what I mean, John. Anastasia glared at John with contempt, shaking her head. What a mess you two have made. I should have killed you when I caught you kissing my sister. None of this would be happening. Serena studied John. The former fire of his life force dimmed under the burden of his situation. Serena felt compassion, an attribute Anastasia had been born without. You want your daughter, John. We want our sister. The only way that can happen is with us on your side. John nodded, staring into the flames of the campfire. Anastasia's voice was shrill, unlike Serena's. By the way, your dear niece won't just be going up against one powerful Frost Coven Witch, John. She's going up against the power of 3. She's way too young to be ready for that. Don't hurt her, Anastasia. It's the demon she's training to fight. Anastasia snapped. My sister's flesh stands between that Sylvari and the demon. John snapped back. Then we'll just be fighting against each other. My God, is there no way out of this? Like I said, Anastasia reminded. What a mess you two have made. If you're worried about Angel, you could just walk away, John, Serena said. The Sylvari is only in this to protect you. If you're not in danger, she'll get on with her life. But you can't do that. We get it. Just as we won't abandon our sister either. So that war Jessica feared is inevitable. Even if I did walk away, Lucifer would use Amanraya to destroy the Eldryn. Anastasia clapped and hooted. Finally, my kind of man. Is he single? He won't stop with the Eldryn, Serena continued, ignoring her sister. His alliance with the Ambrosians is shaky at best. Lucifer will consume both our species, leaving the humans for dessert. John shook his head. It's been 3 years now. What's he waiting for? Clearly, if what you say about Amanraya's magic is true, she's already capable of annihilating us all. That is a mystery, Serena said. But he's waiting for something, to be sure. The fire crackled between them, its light casting shifting shadows across John's troubled face. For the first time in years, the walls he had built around his pain began to crumble. If Lyra hadn't betrayed him, if she too was a victim, then everything he thought he knew was wrong. She loved him, trusted him. How could he hurt her now? Serena and Anastasia stood in unison, the young pine whipping back to its place. Serena spoke. If you find out where they are, we'll be in New Orleans. And not Salem, John smirked. Anastasia giggled. Salem's for all the human fake witches who watch too many movies and play with pretty rocks. New Orleans is the ancient source of dark magic in this land. There's been an odd rise in demonic activity there lately, Serena informed. We want to check it out. Maybe there's going to be a party we can crash. Yeah, you could use a break too, John. Lighten up a bit. It'll be fun. John grimaced. If you do visit, make sure you get a room with a view. The Mississippi River is wonderfully dark this time of year with countless unspeakable secrets submerged in its depths. In a flash, the two Frost Coven sisters flew upwards, disappearing into the night. Alone again with too many thoughts, John removed Lyra's wedding ring from its pouch, its magic sparkling still, like tiny shooting stars against a golden band. Memories intruded into his troubled thoughts, memories of an unprecedented love, his wife, the birth of Amanraya into his own hands, none of which should exist yet does. Their love had not been forbidden because it had always been assumed impossible, yet there it had been. His love for Lyra was no enchantment, no simple spell. He began to feel again what he felt when he first saw the woman he'd been sent to kill, the overriding, all-consuming magic of love. Placing Lyra's wedding ring beside his, they began to glow, resonating in harmony, then ringing in unison. So long as thy love between you be true, Anastasia had spoken at their marriage, these rings will sing together for you. John's mind fell away into a memory, the memory of the day he met the Frost Coven Witch who would become his wife. It had been a warm spring day, he remembered, almost too beautiful of a day for an assassination. He had crouched low in the thicket at the edge of the witch's garden, his breath measured, his movements precise. The High Council had sent him on this mission, entrusting him to eliminate the Frost Coven Witch whose growing power threatened the balance between their kind and humanity. He had executed such tasks before, his aim unerring, his resolve steadfast. But this time it was also personal. There was little doubt in his mind that before him stood one of the three witches who had killed his father in an ambush. From his satchel, he retrieved a single enchanted bullet of his own design. It was sleek, silvery, and etched with glowing runes, a killing blow for beings of shadow. Twisting the projectile between his fingers, he felt the familiar click, then a hum of arcane energy awakened. The bullet began to glow softly as it locked into the pistol's chamber. He steadied his aim, his eyes narrowing as they fixed on the heart of his target, the Frost Coven Witch named Lyra. She was alone in the garden, her sisters nowhere in sight. Dappled sunlight streamed through the canopy above, casting golden patterns on the earth. She moved among the blooms with an almost childlike grace, her fingers brushing against lavender stalks as if coaxing them to grow taller. She picked a few sprigs, arranging them into a loose bouquet. Then, to his astonishment, she twirled, her giggle breaking the silence like the tinkling of wind chimes. Butterflies flitted around her, drawn to her light. John froze. His finger hovered over the trigger. Something about her presence unsettled him, made him hesitate. He rationalized the feeling that it's an illusion, a witch's trick. Yet, the longer he watched her, the harder it became to convince himself. His chest tightened, a strange warmth spreading through him. It was foreign yet familiar, a feeling he'd experienced only once before long ago for a blue-eyed Eldryn woman he'd loved in his youth. He tried to bury the thought, to extinguish the spark threatening to grow into a flame. Focus, John, he told himself. She's dangerous. She killed your father. He re-aimed the pistol, adjusting his grip to steady his shaking hands. Just as he prepared to pull the trigger, a flicker of motion caught his eye. An opal hummingbird, iridescent and impossibly delicate, hovered before him. It landed gently on the barrel of his weapon, its tiny feet gripping the cold steel, its fragile tail blocking the muzzle. John's breath caught. The bird radiated a soft, ethereal glow, a warmth that seemed to pierce through the shadows of doubt clouding his mind. Time seemed to stand still. The hummingbird's tiny eyes met his, and in that silent exchange, he felt its message as clearly as if it had spoken aloud. Not this one, Salvori. She is not evil. Dangerous, yes, but not in the way the High Council had warned. She was fragile, vulnerable, and, most confounding of all, innocent in a way he couldn't reconcile, like the delicate bird resting in his way. His heart warred with his mind. He'd been trained to follow orders without question, to act as the council's blade. Yet for the first time he felt the weight of his own will pushing back against his duty. He lowered the pistol, his hands trembling. The hummingbird hovered again, lingered for a moment longer, then flitted away, its message delivered. His eyes followed its path as it disappeared into the trees, leaving only a sense of peace in its wake. John's rational mind struggled to make sense of what had just happened. A message from God? A hallucination? Or perhaps the truth? Had the council been wrong? Mistaken? She could not have been one of the 3 witches who killed his father, or the sacred hummingbird would not have stopped him from his task. His mind may argue, rationalize, but his heart understood with pristine clarity. He couldn't kill this witch. He won't kill her. From his hiding place, he watched Lyra continue her dance, oblivious to the man who had just spared her life. As she fastened a sprig of lavender behind her ear, she giggled again, her laughter carrying on the breeze like a melody meant only for him. For the first time in years, John felt something stir within him, a rare, fragile magic more potent than any spell, any bolt of lightning, love. Then she saw him. "Oh, hello. Who might you be?" John stammered as he stood up from the shadows. "I'm sorry if I'm intruding. I was passing by when I heard laughter." And so it had begun, all of this now because he loved a woman. This woman, Lyra. John's mind returned to the present. The unbearable weight of his hatred for Lyra became replaced with the heavier weight of guilt. She had not betrayed him after all. The rings would not have sung when placed together. She too had been taken by the Alzorion demon as had his daughter. For 3 years his anger, heartache and humiliation had ruled, dreaming only of at last fulfilling his contract with the High Council and killing the damnable witch upon sight. But like scalding water on frozen glass, his delusion was now shattered. Now he dreamed only of finding her, protecting her, holding her close against him once more. In Part 1.